All right. Beautiful. Well, it is 10:01. We will go ahead and get started this morning. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining in on the Byrne State Crisis Intervention Program application Q&A webinar. My name is Kylie Russell. I'm the grant coordinator for Byrne SCIP, which is administrated through the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. As you all may have noticed, today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on CJC's website and YouTube page later next week. We have a decent amount to cover today, so we can just go ahead and jump right in. So I'll just begin with an agenda overview for today's webinar. We'll start with a quick overview of the CJC, and then we'll move into an overview of the Byrne SCIP solicitation. We'll then discuss budget requests, and we'll review the application that's housed through CJC's online grant management system, SM Apply, and then we'll end with an open Q&A discussion. I do want to encourage folks to ask questions throughout the discussion today, whether just dropping questions in the chat or coming off mute and to ask your questions. Again, we will cover a lot of information, so just feel free to ask your questions as they come up, or you're welcome to save them to the end. All right, so we'll just start with a quick agency overview. So again, I am with the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission, or the CJC, which is a Salem-based Oregon state agency that has a commission body with 12 appointed members. Our agency administers various research projects, policy groups, and state and federal grant programs that center Oregon's criminal justice system. If you all are interested in learning a bit more about the CJC and the type of work that we do, I'll go ahead and just drop in the link to our welcome homepage in the chat, and you're welcome to give us a quick visit. All right, now we'll just jump into why we're all here today, our Byrne SCIP program solicitation overview. So I'll just start with a bit of a background. In 2022, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was signed into law to reduce gun violence, save lives, and to keep guns out of dangerous hands. This act amended an already existing Edward Byrne JAG statute, thus creating a new program area focusing on the implementation of state crisis intervention programs or initiatives. SCIP initiatives can include efforts such as extreme risk protection order programs or ERPO programs that work to keep guns out of hands of those that pose a threat to themselves or to others, as well as law enforcement crisis intervention programs or initiatives, and other related gun violence reduction programs. Again, the Byrne SCIP grant is administered by the Oregon CJC, but it's overseen by the Bureau of Justice Assistance Office, or BJA, under the U.S. Department of Justice through their Office of Justice Programs. So at that federal level, we'll have that federal support. I did just want to share that information about Oregon Byrne SCIP lives on the Byrne State Crisis Intervention Program webpage found on CJC's website. So if you go to the very top of our homepage and click down on grants, you can find our Byrne SCIP link directory there, and it'll take you just to this welcome page. I'll go ahead and drop the link to our Byrne SCIP webpage here as well, just in case you want to give that a quick look. And just speaking of our webpage, I do just want to point out that listed, you'll find various dates, documents, and resources that are available during this application period time. I've highlighted them here for your reference, but I just want to make sure that folks are aware of these. And throughout the solicitation and application overview discussion today, I will be referencing various sections found throughout the Byrne SCIP grant solicitation. And you're welcome to pull that document up and keep it handy if you'd like as well. I'll put that in the chat just so that you have access to it. Okay. Okay, so we'll just begin with the solicitation overview, and we'll just start with who's eligible to apply. So in the grant solicitation document, this information can be found under Section 2. This application is open to both public and private entities with specific eligible agencies or organization types listed here. You'll be asked to select which agency type your application represents in SM Apply. Additionally, I did just want to highlight that there are a few additional requirements for our applicants. First, all applicants must have a unique entity identifier or a UEI at the time of application. If your organization doesn't have one, there's information under Section 2 in the solicitation that may be helpful for you. That's found under federal registration requirements in that subsection. Your agency's UEI will need to be maintained throughout the grant period, so I just wanted to note that. Additionally, applicants can apply individually or as part of consortiums, so in joint with another agency partner. There will need to be one partner that takes the lead on the application, so just wanted to mention that. And then I also just wanted to note that only one application per UEI will be accepted. So if you're a part of a larger agency and there's interest to apply within multiple departments, I would just suggest consulting with those folks before submitting your individual application. And then lastly, I also just wanted to note that interested applicants cannot be suspended nor debarred from receiving federal funding. And this will be something that you'll be asked to attest to during the application process. Any questions on applicant eligibility? All right. I'll then just transition to our SCIP program priorities and program goals. You can reference this information under Section 3 of the solicitation. First, you see here our Oregon Byrne SCIP state goals, but I'm just going to jump right into our Byrne SCIP program priority areas. So projects funded through this grant must support one or more of the three program priority areas outlined in the solicitation. So first, we have an area that includes developing, operating, or evaluating community violence intervention programs. This could include hospital-based interventions, violence interrupter, incredible messenger programs, street outreach initiatives, conflict mediation programs, youth firearm violence intervention programs, or other similar type community violence intervention programs. Next, or the next two priority areas are captured under the same bullet that I'm going to pull up. They're very similar, but they just have a different program focus. So they include facilitating trainings, information campaigns, evaluations, and/or regional coordination efforts that promote the awareness, use, and effectiveness of either protection orders, such as ERPO programs, or secure storage practices of firearms. So we can kind of see that those two are just lumped together there, just with a fine focus on either protection orders or secure storage practices. I also want to go over just an important program eligibility note, which is, again, also outlined under Section 3. All proposed programs or initiatives funded under Byrne SCIP must have a clear and direct connection to crisis intervention, with an emphasis on identifying risk and intervening before harm occurs. This typically means that there must be an immediate need for crisis intervention type work, and initiatives are not just tied to general prevention efforts. This is a BJA program eligibility requirement. So this is something that CJC staff and the commission will heavily review during the application process just to determine who's eligible for funding. I also want to note that for law enforcement-led efforts, proposed activities must be a part of a broader crisis intervention approach, and applicants must address how their efforts focus on identifying and mitigating risk prior to violence taking place. I know that this is a big section, so I'll pause here to see if anybody has any questions on program priorities or eligibility, and then I'll just take a quick look at the chat because I think some folks are putting questions in here as well.
Hi, Kylie. There's a question on how we're defining crisis intervention. And then there's another question on if one of our programs bureaus is part of a consortium, but not the lead applicant, would we be able to submit an application for a different program bureau as the lead solo applicant?
Okay, so I'll try to address how we're defining crisis intervention. So again, we're looking at initiatives that, again, are trying to identify risk and intervening before harm occurs. That's the general definition that BJA is utilizing. And again, the priority is to have there be an immediate need or an immediate response to some of those efforts. And while there may be some gray area between intervention and prevention, that sense of urgency is kind of what's going to be the director. So if there's a program focus that you all have that centers that, and that's going to be something that will be your primary focus, just highlight that in your application. And that's something that we'll be looking for. And then in terms of applying as part of consortium, one of our bureaus, not the lead. Ben, I may need just to connect with you externally, but my understanding is you're welcome to apply kind of in this consortium. You'll be asked to list who your partners or who you are working with in that, in the eligibility, and I'll just go back one slide. You'll be given all of these agency types, and there's an option to select applying individually or applying as consortium. And when you select consortium, you'll just be asked to list all of the folks that you're working with in that regard. So if that answers your question, let me know. If not, I'm happy to connect with you, maybe via email, just to better answer that there. Okay. So we'll go ahead and transition I just want to highlight some key information from the solicitation document itself. Most of this information can be found under Section 4. So this is a competitive one-time federal award opportunity. The CJC is currently accepting applications starting now through our online grant management portal, SM Apply, with the application deadline being Wednesday, July 8th. We have an estimated 21-month project timeline beginning January 1st, 2027 and ending September 30th, 2028. We have just a little over $4.4 million available in total funding. That'll be sourced from CJC's 2 current Byrne SCIP funding awards. The CJC is required to adhere to several pass-through requirements, which I believe somebody in the chat had asked about as well. So there's a requirement for local units of government as well as less than $10,000 jurisdiction areas. These requirements are outlined in the solicitation and will be assessed and prioritized during the application review process. So if you are a unit of local government or are serving a less than $10,000 jurisdiction area, please be sure to highlight this in your application submission so that that can be duly prioritized. I'm going to be going into a bit more detail on how to find out if your agency qualifies or is eligible for that less than 10K pass-through requirement, but any questions on this slide before I proceed? And then Jane, just in terms of your questions in terms of applying individually or as part of consortium, there's not going to be a favor of who's applied. The only thing that I just want to mention is that only one UEI will be accepted. So if between these 2 different agencies or organizations, there's interest from another to submit an additional application, we will only accept one UEI per organization. So it might be worth having the other agency submit and take the lead as that application or on that application, but no preference will be favored. Okay, so we'll just transition and now chat about our less than 10K jurisdiction pass-through requirement. So while our first pass-through requirement for local units of government is a bit more contingent again on those qualifying units, there's a bit more opportunity for eligibility for the less than 10K pass-through, where both public and private organizations can be eligible. The less than $10,000 entity list here is not a reference to the amount that you all are eligible for. Rather, it's simply a label that BJA uses to address these areas. And so to be eligible for this pass-through, applicants must directly or indirectly serve one of the jurisdictions listed on one of the two JAG entity lists. So there are two Excel forms listed on the resource page on our Byrne SCIP webpage. Applicants will need to review those two lists to see if their target enforcement areas are listed. So where their proposed activities will be taking place or will be serving, again, either directly or indirectly. If the target area that you'll be serving are listed on either of those two lists, just be sure to select those counties or municipalities during the application process on SM Apply. Any questions here? Okay. So now just to chat about the application review criteria. So since this will be a competitive process, applicants will be asked to answer a series of questions which have been divided into categories that you see here on the slide. These are also outlined in the solicitation under Section 6, and the full application questions are located in our solicitation document later on page 10. So you're welcome to see all of the questions that you're asked in SM Apply starting on page 10. During the review process, applicants again will be rated based on how effectively they address the required sections listed here. This will include their program's connection to crisis intervention, the demonstrated need, their proposed program design, their organizational capacity, and their data and sustainability planning, as well as their budget requests. Applicants will also be asked to submit several supporting documents as a part of their overall application package, and we'll review those a little bit later on during our discussion today. Again, applicants that meet those pass-through requirements that we previously discussed will receive prioritization through the scoring process. And now we'll just review the evaluation and selection process overview. So for those that have applied for one of our state-funded grant programs, I do want to share that the federal process is just slightly different. First, the scoring and review will be conducted by CJC staff, where we will look for completeness and adherence to those program rules and federal guidelines. We'll be using a scoring rubric to assess the areas that we just mentioned. And applications that meet those requirements and meet the scoring threshold will be recommended to our commission for further consideration. Our commission will then review CJC staff recommendations to ensure that the selected applicants adhere to state and federal priorities. Those selected and approved applications will then be routed to BJA, who will then review each applicant's proposed program and budget package to ensure that each applicant adheres to those federal SCIP program and financial guidelines. I do want to note that BJA will be the ones to make those final decisions on who will be awarded for funding. On the next slide, I have our tentative timeline, but any questions on this overall process?
Does this differ from how the Byrne, I know you said it's different from the state grants, but does this differ from how the Byrne JAG grants work?
Very similar to Byrne JAG. So similar to Byrne JAG, once the commission approved CJC's recommendations, all of those selected applicants are then routed to BJA. So very similar to Byrne JAG.
Okay. And does I know there had been a, not task force, but sort of a, advisory board for
Yes,
this grant. Do
yes.
they have a role in the process?
Our Crisis Intervention Advisory Board is now our commission. So during March, it was voted to have our commission act as our advisory body. So the two are now captured in the one,
Great,
making
thank you.
it a little bit more streamlined. Yeah, thank you for your questions. Okay. So here's our tentative timeline for our Oregon SCIP efforts. As you can see, we're currently in the application submission period and just waiting for the application deadline on July 8th. That first red highlighted box there. Once the application period closes, CGC staff will begin the application review and federal risk assessment process, which we anticipate taking roughly 2 months or so to complete. CJC staff will then present the applications that meet our pass-through priorities and scoring threshold to the commission to be considered for selection, and that will take place in early September of 2026, highlighted in that second red box there. Once the commission makes their selections, notice of conditional approval will be sent out to applicants shortly after, so highlighted in blue. So just note that when you submit your application in early July, you will be notified whether you are moving on for BJA approval or if you were not selected at this time in early September. So I just want to kind of note that timeline there. The selected applicants will then be routed to BJA for final review and approval, which we anticipate taking place during October and November. Once approved, we'll move into the execution of subawards, hopefully taking place in December, and then we'll move into program activities starting in January 2027, highlighted in yellow. This slide concludes the solicitation overview section. Any questions before I proceed? You're again welcome to put them in the chat. You're welcome to hold on to them until later on, but I just want to pause.
Hi, Kylie, there's a question from Jane
Yeah.
Prescott. Is partial funding available or is it an all or nothing situation?
That's a great question. So folks can request funding with a minimum ask of $150,000 and a maximum ask of $500,000. So again, we have about $4.4 million available. That will be split amongst several subrecipients across the state. So folks are welcome to request funding within that range. Okay. We'll then jump into our budget request overview. So linked in the solicitation document, there's a preferred Excel form that we would like applicants to use for their budget submissions. Applicants will be able to upload the budget detail worksheet as an Excel document in SM Apply. I do just want to note that this form has several tabs that you all are welcome to use, but I do just want to highlight a couple of areas today. So I have all of just the general overview of those tabs, but tabs 2 through 6, this is where applicants will be submitting their budget requests. Since this will end up being a multi-year project, you can use the estimated 21-month project period to build your budgets for years 1 and 2 on tabs 2 and 3. So you won't be needing to use tabs 2 through 6, 1 through 5, just because this is just a 2-year project span. And then I also just want to highlight that on tab 8, there's an example budget detail request sheet. I'll be reviewing that in a few slides, but I just want to highlight that this is a really great example just because it outlines how requests should be itemized and how project costs should be explained. And then outlined in the solicitation as well in SM Apply, once you get to this section, there are various instructions and budget requirements that all applicants must adhere to. So first, all budget requests must clearly align with the proposed program activities or initiatives that you're submitting for. All budget requests must conform to the federal cost principles of being reasonable, allocable, they need to be allowable, as well as consistent. All requests need to be itemized and separated by line item under each budget category, which we will get to on the next slide. And then they each need to have clear cost calculations, as well as a clear narrative and justification on why they're being requested. And then lastly, they all need to comply with the US DOJ's grants financial guide. This will be just our guiding light in a way of what will be allowable or what's prohibited. So this is outlined in the solicitation document, as well as several instances in SMApply in the application. I just dropped the link to it here in the chat as well, but I just want to make sure that everybody has access to that. And then as outlined in section 5 of the solicitation, we have program funds must be spent within specific federal budget categories. And so I'll quickly just go into all of these as well, but these will also mirror the categories that are found on that budget detail worksheet Excel form that we linked. So the first allowable budget category is personnel. The salaries and wages for folks that are going to be funded on the grant and contributing to those grant objectives. We also have a fringe benefit category. So folks, again, that are funded on the grant, the fringe benefits for those personnel. We also have a travel category. This will include the transportation, lodging, per diem, that support overall grant purposes. So just want to note that there. We also have an equipment category. This will include a permanent, non-expendable equipment that has a useful life of over a year and is over $10,000 per unit cost. Additionally, we have a supplies category. This will be for consumable materials or supplies that don't meet that useful life or cost threshold of the equipment category. So sometimes the equipment and supplies can be confused, but just know for equipment, it has to have a useful life of a year and there's that cost threshold. And then everything else that doesn't meet that will go in supplies. We also have a subaward category. So this will be entities that the recipient is working with that will be responsible for part or all of the program objectives. I do want to note that subawards are subjective to federal grant regulations, and they do require BJA approval. Additionally, there is a contractual service area. This will include project-specific goods, maybe technical expertise or equipment that is provided to the grant recipient in order to conduct those program activities. And then additionally, there are consultants. These will be folks that are not funded on the grant, but are providing services maybe like on an hourly fee basis. I do also just want to share that BJA approval is needed for rates above $650 a day or $81.25 an hour. And so both contractual services and consultants will actually fall in our procurement contracts budget category on that budget detail worksheet, but there's subgroups within the procurement contract. So I just want to highlight that there. Additionally, there's an other cost category. So this will include all other allowable expenses, such as participant support costs, training registration costs, maybe meeting room rental spaces. And then there's also indirect costs. So this can include the standard 15% de minimis rate, or if your agency has a federally approved NICRA rate, we can use that as well with approved documentation. And while it is not its own budget category, administrative costs are also allowable. This can include grant management type activities such as reporting, monitoring, budgeting, or accounting, all of those Byrne SCIP activities. There are a couple of notes. So since they aren't allocated, they have to be tied directly to the project, so they won't be able to be lumped into the indirect cost pool. and they all admin costs have to be capped at 10% of the total costs that are being requested. Additionally, so since there's not a specific budget category for admin costs, we have to place them in an appropriate budget category. So this likely will be in our personnel, fringe, and maybe even travel categories. So you're funding a particular person that's going to be conducting grant management services. We'll put them in personnel, include their fringe benefits, but maybe you want to build out travel for site monitoring or things in that nature. You can do that as well. But again, just limited to 10% of the total cost requested. Any questions here?
Sorry, Kylie, I have a quick comment on the equipment. I just wanted to clarify that $10,000 threshold is for the per unit acquisition cost. And that's actually all the costs that are needed to ready that piece of equipment for intended use. So that could include attachments, accessories, they even warranties, licensing, things like that. So just everyone, make sure when you're assessing if something would fall under equipment that you would look at the totality of those costs.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. Okay. Well, now, just quickly, I won't be able to go deep into this comparison, but I at least want to make sure folks that are aware that BJA does have a classification of how subrecipients or subawards and contractor services or procurement contracts are determined. So if you are thinking about submitting costs for either of these, but not totally sure where they may fall, I do just want to point you to a resource on the OJP website where they have a subrecipient versus procurement contract checklist that you're welcome to review when you're trying to determine which category those costs may fall into. Okay, and so now in terms of unallowable costs, there's a full explanation outlined in section 5 of the solicitation. I'll quickly review these here, but just so you know, SCIP grant funds cannot be used for supplanting of any already existing type of program, service, or already operating program. Funds cannot be used for compensation of federal employees. They cannot be used for lobbying, fundraising, or donations, nor can they be used for land acquisition or construction. They can't be used for physical facility improvements such as restoration or remodeling. They can't be used for employee bonuses or commissions. They cannot be used for firearms, tactical equipment, or electronic immobilization devices, or EIDs. Grant funds can't be used for polygraphs, drones, unmarked vehicle purchases, fines, penalties, late charges, nor taxes. Grant funds also can't be used towards entertainment or things that can kind of be classified as this. This can include tickets to shows or sporting events or prizes or gratuities. Funds also can't be used towards food, drink, nor catering. There's a caveat, per diem is allowable. It just has to align with those state and federal travel policies. Additionally, lodging above the federal per diem rates are unallowable. Warranty services, agreements, or contracts that cover any period that extends beyond the project end date. So again, we are operating with an estimated 21-month project period, so you won't be able to request warranties or services in that 22 or 25-month range. So I just want to note that. Additionally, funds can't be used for the provision of legal services to any removable alien or alien otherwise unlawfully present in the United States, as well as activities or costs not approved by CJC or BJA. There is a full list of prohibited uses found in the grant's financial guide. Again, you can reference back to that link, but any questions on unallowables? Okay. So I just want to quickly highlight, this is the example found in that budget detail worksheet that you're all welcome to utilize. And I just really try to encourage you to look at this. You will have to click almost to the very end of the tabs to be able to view it. But again, it provides excellent examples for all 9 of our budget categories. So this one is specific to a personnel request, where the example applicant is requesting funding for 3 staff members. As you can see, each individual staff member is separated by line item. They included their name, their position title, their base salary, whether the salary is charged on an annual or hourly basis, their time worked, and then their percentage of time dedicated to the grant. And so using that information, the built-in equations will then compute the total costs and federal requests per employee. These 3 personnel requests then need to be justified in the narrative section. So as you can see, the example applicant just clearly outlines how these 3 personnel requests will align with the proposed program. For SCIP, we would also like to see how they aligned with the selected program priority areas. So for example, if you are selecting community violence intervention programming, just how your personnel requests may attribute to that particular program area. Additionally, this example applicant provided just clear cost calculations for each personnel line request, outlining the percentage of time or the number of hours worked. So just provided a lot of key information and detail that makes it easy, and requesting this for all of you will make it easy for our CJC staff as well as BJA when they're conducting their budget overviews. This is the last slide in our budget request section. Any questions here before I move on? You're welcome to put them in the chat, or we can save it for the Q&A session. Okay. Well, chugging right along, we'll just dive right into our last section before the open Q&A. So here we'll just take a look at our SM Apply platform. So again, applicants will be required to submit a complete package addressing the following sections in order to be considered for funding. In SM Apply, there are 6 sections, sections A through F, that mirror what's outlined in the solicitation document. Responses to these areas, again, will be assessed during the evaluation process. I do want to note that once folks get to section D, the application narrative, this is where the main meat of the application will be. There are various subsections here that will have word limits that applicants must adhere to. So I just want to ensure that you're, one, meeting those word limits, but also just trying to be as clear and concise and direct in your responses as you can be. So just taking a look at SM Apply, like when you're in our portal, I'll just kind of walk you through here. So to start, you'll just log in, or potentially registering if you've never applied for one of our CJC grants through SM Apply before. I'll go ahead and drop the link in our chat to where you can land on our main program page. So if you click on this link, it'll take you to our main program page, which lists all of CJC's grant programs. You'll need to find our Byrne SCIP program. Once you find it, you'll click on it, and then you'll hit apply on the right-hand side, again, after logging in or registering if needing. If you'll be working on the application with others, you can add collaborators to the application by selecting Add Collaborator once you're in your application. You'll simply hit Add Collaborator, then you can add their email and the type of access you want to grant them, and then simply send them an invite, and they should be able to access it. Once in the application, you'll see a fairly long introduction under the task instructions. This outlines what Byrne SCIP is, highlights those pass-through requirements, and then also just highlights what applicants are expected to submit. I do want to note that this intro pops up on every page, so you're welcome to hide this just simply by clicking the hide button to the right of the title header here. And so Here at the top, you can see that the instructions are hidden, but if you ever want to reference them back, all you simply do is select show to the right of that title header again, and then those will drop down. The second arrow here just highlights the progress that you're making throughout the application. And so there will be a percentage bar telling you just how much you've completed, which is just a nice visual indicator. You will start your application in section A, which is the request for application. And this is where applicants will provide all of that necessary contact information, the UBI that they're listing as well. And then in this section, applicants will be asked to share what their funding request is. I do want to note that when you're submitting this, the system will only request integers. So if you're requesting, again, anything from that $150,000 minimum to the maximum $500,000, something in that range, just omit the $sign and the comma and simply put the number values. There is a note on SM Apply that kind of highlights this, but I just wanted to verbally share that just because it is a little bit funky and something that just came up during my review as well. And then once you've inputted all of that, you'll just hit next. I do also just always like to encourage folks to hit save and continue editing anytime that there's been an edit on a specific page that you're working on, and then hit next. All right, and so jumping all the way to section D, the application narrative section, here is where applicants will need to explain how their organization's proposed program activities demonstrate a direct connection to crisis intervention. I do want to note that the program eligibility response section begins with 2 yes or no style questions. If you select no on either of these yes/no questions, your application will be automatically deemed ineligible and will terminate your submission when you hit next. So I just want to highlight that it's important to, in order to be considered for funding, that you're selecting yes, our proposed activities have a direct connection to crisis intervention, rather than stating no. There is like a "are you sure" pop-up that comes up when you select no, but I do just want to clarify that there. And then you'll be asked to specifically explain how your proposed programs have a direct connection to crisis intervention. Again, it's going to be an open text box, so you're able to add a bit of just language and color to what that explanation might be. There is a word limit here, so just want to make sure you're mindful of that. But I do just want to share this is going to be an important response because this is what staff will use just to, again, determine eligibility. So just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. And the demonstrated need portion is where the main portion of the application narrative will begin. Here, applicants will describe their problems or needs they're experiencing in their service areas. Again, here I also just want to point out the word limits in all of these open text boxes. We understand that it may be challenging to condense some of these written responses into such a potentially truncated response, but we're just really hoping that folks will be able to be clear and as succinct as possible. So we're just trying to look for direct responses that clearly address those prompts or those questions at hand. And then jumping to section E, this is the budget portion of the application. Here, it'll begin with a bit of instruction, again, just outlining how requested funds need to adhere to those federal guidelines and budget guidelines that we reviewed just a few slides ago. Here's also where you will upload that Excel budget detail worksheet document. You'll also be asked to acknowledge that all of the budget requests meet those outlined budget requirements as well. So there's a couple of check boxes at the bottom of this screen grab that just highlights those here. Also, if you're asking for travel or admin costs, there are a few additional acknowledgements that you'll be asked to make. For travel, just be sure that all of the requested line items adhere to those federal GSA rates. This will mostly be specific to lodging and per diem mostly. If you're requesting admin costs, we'll just need again to see where those costs are being allocated to personnel, the personnel category most likely. Let's see. But again, those admin costs will just need to be capped at that 10% of the total cost being requested, and then just clearly justified in the narrative section. And then in section F, this is actually located on the same page in section E on SM Apply, and this is where applicants will need to submit those additional required documents and certifications. These items align with our federal monitoring regulations and will be used during the risk assessment portion of the application review. The required forms are linked directly in SM Apply, but they're also found on our SCIP webpage under the document section, and they're also directly linked in the grant solicitation PDF document. So there's a few places for you to find these. If your organization is requesting indirect costs above the 15% de minimis rate, you'll need to upload your agency's federally approved NICRA in order for that to be considered. We also recognize that not all agencies or organizations have a single audit report. So this has been left as an optional upload, but this may be something that we need to confirm with applicants at a later time. So if you have questions on this or not sure what to upload, please don't hesitate to reach out to me as you're kind of going through this process. And then once you've uploaded all of the required documents, all that's left to do is to submit. You'll receive a notification stating that your application was submitted. You won't be able to make any changes once it's submitted, but you can go back and look at it by going and clicking on Go to My Applications in SM Apply. Okay, so that wraps up our SM Apply overview, and I just want to cap it off with a few reminders. Again, all proposed activities or initiatives need to have a direct connection to crisis intervention. Again, the application narrative has word limits, so we're just really trying to encourage folks to be as focused and direct in your responses as possible. We've also outlined several resources on the Byrne SCIP webpage. Review them, use them, ask questions about them if you have them. And then speaking of questions, you all are welcome to ask for clarity or guidance when needed. There are a few caveats to what staff will be able to help with. Since this is a competitive process, we won't be able to help with like program specific items, such as like we won't be able to review a draft response to see if it makes sense or if it's a good response that meets this maybe this definition. But we can help with general clarifying type questions such as program rules or guidelines, what a specific program requirement might mean, helping an applicant better understand a specific portion in the solicitation, troubleshooting in SM Apply. If anybody has any issues utilizing the budget detail worksheet that we are encouraging folks to use, again, you're welcome to reach out and we can try to navigate some of those. And then just in terms of who to reach out to, here's some contact information. If you have programmatic clarifying type questions or budget type questions, things in that regard, please feel free to reach out to me, Kylie Russell. My email is listed here. If you have questions about SM Apply or are having some just technical difficulties, you are welcome to reach out to Lindsay Phillips, who's on the call today and whose email I've included here as well. Lindsay can help again just with those troubleshooting or access issues. But if your question in SM Apply is a bit more programmatic focused, just please reach out to me. And that actually concludes my overview. So I can go ahead and open it up for general Q&A. You're welcome to pop things in the chat if you prefer, or just come off of mute. And I can leave the slides up and I can reference back to them if that's helpful, but I'll go ahead and pause. Yes. Amy?
Hi there. Yeah, thank you. I feel like I have a lot of questions, but one is
Yeah.
we don't have a unique identity and identifier, sorry, entity identifier, I don't think, right? Is that if do we get that if we've applied for federal grants before or state grants?
Yes, typically. And so I can just share there's information in the solicitation on how, if your organization doesn't have one, you can apply to get one. And information on that can be found through sam.gov. And I will try to drop that link here in the chat for you so that you have
Okay.
access to that.
Do you think we'll have that before July 8th?
Yes, typically I've seen some applicants be able to get it just like pretty shortly. So it's and Danielle, you're welcome to pop off mute as well. But I don't believe it's a terribly cumbersome nor long process in order to obtain that.
Yeah, hi. I think it's like 5 business days or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think it's a pretty simple, if you're not, yeah. So I think you should be okay.
Okay. And I'm sorry to introduce myself. I'm the executive director for Alliance for a Safe Oregon. I'm sorry I didn't say that. So, and then also we're doing work in both ERPO and secure storage. And is it an application that combines the two? Is
Yeah.
that okay if we like really are talking about funding both for both of those areas of our work?
Definitely. And so basically in SM Apply, you'll be asked at the very least, funding requests need to support one of our 3 program priority areas, but you are welcome to select more if your initiatives are like multi-focused. And so if they are both centering ERPO's type programming as well as safe storage, you're welcome to select both of those in SM Apply.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, only 2 more questions. So
Yeah.
one person had asked about like partial funding. So say I asked for 250, just to use a round number, and is there a possibility you could come back and say, we're not going to give you 250, but we'll give you 150? Or is it like I think that was the question they were getting to
Oh,
or
sure.
is it all or nothing? Like you're like, nope, you get nothing because we didn't like your 250 amount.
We typically, so during our application review process, we will try to prioritize the full funding requests. Again, what may happen is if something is unallowable, we may need to just remove that from the budget request, but we're hoping to fund applicants in what they're asking. And so we likely won't come back with a reduced portion. And we definitely won't be like making the suggestion on what is being funded just outside of those allowability portions.
Okay, great. And then last question. So one of the things that we do is we distribute free gun safes. And
Okay.
I don't know if that's considered like a hardware cost that we could use funding for. I know it's like not, Medicaid doesn't allow for reimbursement. I just don't know if that matters, or if that is something we could include is the cost of gun safes.
I believe these are, yes. So in our Byrne SCIP FAQ document, which is outlined on our SCIP webpage, I'll also just drop it here. For whatever reason, when I go to do this, it says a 2022 coronavirus. It's just mistitled in the link.
Oh, okay.
But BJA does outline that gun locks and storage for individuals and businesses are allowable. So you're welcome to take a look at that.
Right. Okay,
That's something that we will be looking at as well. That can be found under FAQ number 32. That was updated in May of 2024. But I do also just want to highlight the SCIP FAQ document just because it is just a really helpful just information resource. I also do just want to comment when you are referring to the Byrne SCIP FAQ, this covers information for all BJA allowable Byrne SCIP activities. Our Oregon Byrne SCIP initiatives are a little bit more fine focused. So what is listed here may not be the direct focus of Oregon. So just be a little bit mindful. Things like ERPO programs, community violence intervention, safe storage, all of that is captured, but there's a few additional program areas that BJA covers that Oregon Byrne SCIP is just not focusing on during this round of funding.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm sorry I had so many questions, but that
No,
was
that's
really
great.
helpful.
I really appreciate it.
Okay,
Really
thanks.
appreciate it. Okay. Love is Stronger.
Yes, good morning. Lionel Irvin, Director of Love is Stronger. And my question was, just for clarification, you can be a subrecipient of multiple applications?
Not of multiple applications, no. So there will just be, as an applicant, you'll just be able to submit an application for or one application to be considered. If you if you're working, maybe you're not the lead applicant, and maybe you're working to partner with folks in like a sub award capacity or like a partnering capacity, that's something that we can look at. But in terms of submitting an application, only one will be able to be accepted for consideration.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great questions, everybody. Thank you all for asking them. We have a couple more minutes here, so I'm happy to answer any more. And again, if something else comes up over the next couple of days, you're of course welcome to reach out to me via email. Okay, well, I am hearing maybe that this is a potential good time to close. So I just want to thank everybody for joining in today. We're really excited to push out this first round of funding for Byrne SCIP in our state. I know that there's been some high anticipation for this funding opportunity to come to fruition. So we're really excited to have all of your interest, and just really excited to have this opportunity come out for Oregonians across the state. So thanks for joining today. Again, you're welcome to reach out with any further questions that you may have, and hope you all have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and happy application submission to you all. Okay.